Welcome to the episode 39 of Screw Being Unhappy podcast. I am Zuzana Mukumai, and today I am talking to Adriana Baer. Adriana is a public speaking coach whose mission is to help clients to claim their stage, radiate confidence and charisma, propel their careers, and increase their impact. With over 20 years as a professional theater director and arts leader, Adriana brings a unique perspective and practical and actionable set of tools to her coaching. Hi, Adriana. I am so excited to have you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
And public speaking is a topic very dear to me. I would say now, I would say dear. As somebody who couldn't say actually a thing in front of a camera 7 years ago and overcoming it, I believe that we can all manage the public speaking and overcome our fears. So you used to be a theater director, you still direct sometimes, and you used to live in the New York City. But now you are fully focusing on public speaking coaching. So could you tell me more what brought you to the world of public speaking coaching?
Yes, thank you. So, as you said, I've been a theater director for about 20 years, and that's what my background is really working with artists to tell stories in front of audiences. And over the course of my time as a theater director, occasionally people would approach me who were not in the theater, who were in business, and say, like yourself, I need to give a TEDx talk, or I need to speak in front of my board, or pitch an idea or a project. Can you help me with that? And so I would help people just casually to increase their public speaking skills and communicate really well with whoever it was they were trying to talk to. And then, as so many of us have a story about because of COVID, blah, blah, blah. But for me, as a theater director and as a university teacher, it became very, very difficult to do my job when I couldn't be in person with people. So I started doing more and more of the public speaking coaching over the last 4 years. And that really became a new passion and a new direction for my business. So since 2020, I've been growing my public speaking coaching, and I love it because I get to talk to and work with people all over the world now because of the amazing technology that we have available to us. So now I really focus on anybody who needs to give a message about their business out into the world, whether that's either a coach like yourself or a consultant or a business owner. I help them communicate their message.
That's I really want to start with what you ended with, that people want to communicate their messages, because often when we say public speaking, we imagine giving speech in front of huge audiences or TEDx
Yeah.
talk or TED Talks. And I actually recently got a couple of clients who just mentioned it, that we want to get better in speaking in front of
Mm.
other people. And I believe this also qualifies as a public
Yeah.
speaking. And I remember, probably you know this research since you are expert in this area, but there was some US-based research, I believe, which showed that most of the people are scared more of public speaking than dying, which
Yes.
is pretty telling. So I'm curious, what's the first most important step for somebody to start speaking in front of people and communicate more effectively? And again, I don't mean really going up to the stage, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe being able to present their idea in front of their bosses at work.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important distinction because my belief is that public speaking is anytime you're talking to one or more other people that you don't know very well. So, like you said, this counts. You and I together doing a podcast episode, this is public speaking. Talking to your boss can feel like public speaking. So, anytime you're really communicating with somebody that is outside of your comfort zone, outside of your normal, friend or family circle, that can bring up fears, nerves, anxiety, etc. So the very first thing I like to start with, and this I think is not what most people think to start with is actually, instead of thinking at all about what you're going to say, I ask people to really try to figure out where in their body the anxiety is coming up. So where do they notice that they feel uncomfortable? For some people, they realize that their breathing gets really shallow and they have a really hard time catching their breath. Or they might notice that their voice gets really high and squeaky or tight, or they run out of air when they're speaking. Or they might notice that their hands start getting sweaty or their stomach feels like it has butterflies. So we really try to start with what's really going on for you as the individual. And then we get you a set of tools that will work for that particular issue. Because, you know, every single person is unique and we're all individuals. And so, you know, I don't like to give blanket statements like this is how you solve the problem of being afraid of public speaking. We've got to first figure out what it is for you as the individual. So I'm curious for you, you said you transformed and now you consider yourself a more comfortable public speaker, but you weren't before. Do you remember what used to happen for you physically when you would think about public speaking?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure if I remember. I just every time I felt stuck, like whatever I start saying, it was not coming out. So maybe it was stuck. The things were happening around my mouth. But I'm curious. Like, let's say I would feel it like around my throat, or so. What that I wanted to ask you. What is the next step once you identify where in the body the person feels it? What is the next step? How do you work with that knowledge?
Yeah. So I think that's also a really important point. For some people, it's that they feel like their mind goes blank or they start saying something and kind of forget their train of thought or whatever. So I think of that as part of the body's experience, right? It's like a mental shutdown, but it might not necessarily be a somatic feeling. Like I know exactly where it lives in my body. It might be, I know that I can't get my words out the way that I want them to. So once we figure out what it is for each individual person, then there's a lot of tools that we can tap into. So there's grounding meditations for people who feel really nervous. I actually have a free one on my website. So I'll name that right now, that resource is there to try to ground your body and feel present in the space. There's vocal warm-ups. A lot of people, and this is so interesting, coming from the theater, warming up your breath, your body, and your voice is just part of the daily practice. It's like if you were a violinist in the orchestra, picking up your violin and practicing your scales to warm up before a performance seems really obvious. A lot of us don't remember that our bodies or our breath or our voice is our instrument. That's how we're communicating our message. So for a lot of people, even when they're just talking to their boss or they're presenting in a meeting, they don't spend any time focusing on their breath or their body or their voice. They just focus on the brain stuff. So what am I saying? What are the words, how are my slides looking? What's my presentation like? And what I'll often recommend is do a warm up your body, warm up your breath, warm up your voice so that you feel connected to your instrument. And that will then allow you to be more present so that you can get that message across. And then sometimes we have to sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask, and feel free to finish your thought and then answer this. Like, how do you go about the warm up? So I'm imagining I want to talk to my boss. So should I just go to the toilet and start trying to say what I want to say, or how do we do that?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah. So when it's in a workplace setting, it's often the most challenging because it's, if you work in an office, it's hard to go into the bathroom and start doing vocal warm-ups. People get really nervous about that. So I'll say, go outside and take a walk around the block, right? And so this is also what we want to figure out, because for people who get butterflies in their stomach, sometimes they just need to go outside and run around the building once, or somebody who feels like their words get jumbled. I'll say to them, we need you to do a vocal warm-up before you speak. So we're going to give you some tongue twisters. We're going to give you some breath work. And yeah, you might need to go outside or go into your car if you have your car there, or, find a little tiny corner where you can do this, or shut the door of your office if you have an office. You got to kind of get creative about it. And then it's, there's a whole lot, and you can just look these up, tongue twisters, vocal warm-ups, vocal exercises. I have a boatload of resources that I can point people to as well, but it's really about figuring out what works for you. Because again, what works for me and what works for you may not work for, the next person. So we've got to do some homework to try things out and see how it works.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, I was about to start laughing because in my head, as you mentioned, the tongue twisters, I just imagine I have this important conversation with my boss. I want to really convince her of something, and then I just go to the toilet and start saying the Czech tongue twisters, and I think just like doing it, your attention shift, you feel like, what the heck I'm doing, like, and then you perhaps like become less nervous just because you do something which you think seems very
silly. Yeah, I love it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I work so closely with my clients to figure out their individual needs and what's going on for them. Mm-hmm. Some people, that's exactly what they need. What they need is to go do something so silly that they take themselves less seriously. Right? Yeah. Some people, it's the opposite. They feel like they don't have any power, so they need to go and stand in a powerful pose or a posture of power, right? Mm-hmm. Take up a lot of space physically so that they can really feel what it feels like to be, a powerful presence in the room. Yeah. And and it also, and this is the key piece. What I'm about to say, I think, is the most important thing, besides figuring out what it is for you. The next thing's going to sound a little bit contradictory, but I often say it's so crucial to know who you're speaking to and what you want them to do once you speak. And this can be a tool that you use whether you're speaking to one person or 1,000 people. But so often when a speaker falls flat or they don't achieve their goal with talking to their boss or giving a big speech, it's because they are focusing so much on what they're saying and not enough on who they're saying it to. So we do have to spend some time thinking, what is the right energy to achieve my goal? What is the right, do I need to take myself less seriously? Do I need to be super powerful? Do I need to communicate in more of a friendly kind of language, or do I need to be more formal? And the only way you can answer those questions, which is sort of you might know what you're saying, but it's the how you're saying it. The only way to do that is to spend some time thinking about who it is you're speaking to and what you're hoping to get from them.
This really resonates, and both of these things helped me actually during my TEDx talk, because the first one, having kind of some strategy how to kind of relax a bit, what really helped me, and I don't know how I came up with it, I don't remember reading it, but maybe I did. Just the day before the TEDx talk, during the dress rehearsal, I forgot one part of the talk, so I was a bit nervous, and I was like, oh, what if I prepare something to say in case I forgot? So I prepared something. Now I don't remember what was it, but I felt, oh, okay, if I forget, I just say this, because there is no way I can forget this, and it will be kind of funny and it will show the point. And that made me feel really confident that in case I don't stand there like this, but say something. So that was one thing that really helped me. And the second one was about the audience. That of course I was nervous when I started, and then I start looking at the people, and then I start talking to them, and then I kind of forgot I'm on the stage. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it really happened like that. I was really happy that I shared some example of me and my partner arguing about the TV. So then I was told, after I have gone on the stage, the people start cheering. There was a couple, married couple said, no, we don't argue about the TV, but we always argue about cutting bread, and like this connection. I think that was really amazing, and that really helped me as a speaker, and like forgetting about that I am speaking, but concentrating on the people in front of me.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned, which I think is such a useful tool, is telling personal stories. Because a lot of people who are starting to do speaking, or again talking to their boss, where whatever the status is, they feel like a lower status in that room. Imposter syndrome will come up a lot. A lot of people say to me, how do I deal with imposter syndrome? And one of the ways I think we can get away from that is by realizing that our personal story, you can't argue with somebody's personal story, right? Your story is your story is your story. And your anecdote about arguing with your husband about the TV, that is that's your life that you're sharing. People feel connected to other people's true, authentic storytelling. It's why we watch TV in the first place, right? And so when you can really ground down into a personal anecdote or bring people into your world, they feel more connected to you. And then you're able to kind of have a transformational journey in your speaking because of that. So that's a really good point. And then you found these moments of connection with other people. And if you hadn't told that, or you hadn't told anything personal, your point might have gotten across. But my guess is they remember more about who you are and your energy and their connection with you because you shared a little bit more about yourself.
Adriana, going back to the public speaking in everyday moments.
Yeah.
As you said, to speaking to one or more people we don't know that well. If somebody is planning to improve her or his speaking, what are the everyday steps one can take? Really something very simple, all of us can easily do every day.
So I have a few thoughts on this. It depends again on what works for each person. But one of the things that I think can be such an easy way of practicing is starting to chat with strangers. So if you go to the store and the person who is, checking out your groceries, you just start talking to them. And and one of the ways to do that is compliment a stranger on their shoes, or ask them a question about something that you observe about them. Just that interaction of starting to open up a little bit and not be so guarded can really help those day-to-day interactions and start realizing that other people are not scary. Because a lot of this is just I get nervous about other people. I worry that they're judging me, or I worry that, I'm going to say something stupid. So in really low stakes, really find the lowest stakes possible place, the grocery store, the coffee shop, at the park, whatever it is for you, just try to give yourself the challenge of speaking to one stranger a day. And even for one sentence or two sentences, and then you start to get in the habit, your body realizes that you're safe. And your neural pathways can be, which we know now, our brains can change and the neural pathways can move and meld. If you continue to practice being vulnerable and having it be safe, then you can start to train your body and your brain and your subconscious to know that when you do speak to people, it's okay. And then for people who might be open to this, not everybody is, but I think that I actually really hate social media most of the time, I'll be honest. But there are a few tools on social media that can be really helpful. One of them is the stories function, like on Instagram or Facebook, your stories, because they're about 1 minute or less, and they disappear within 24 hours. So I encourage my clients sometimes to just put up a personal story on Instagram or Facebook, once or twice a week, maybe increase that number and talk about whatever. Talk about a book you like. Talk about this pretty flower you saw. Talk about an idea you have. It doesn't even matter. It just gives you the opportunity to practice speaking out loud, thinking about who you're speaking to, and getting the words out. And then I would also encourage people, because a lot of times, if you're starting to practice online, people can get really, because you have the opportunity to erase and re-record, I really encourage people when they're starting out to set a timer and say, I'm only going to do this once or twice or 5 times. Or I'm going to set a timer. This can only take me 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, whatever it is going up. Because otherwise we can get obsessed with perfection, and you're never going to get perfection. So we have to create structure for ourselves so we can have a little bit more freedom inside of it.
I'm sure we all who are in online space know it when we record 30 minutes video for 1 hour, having the full camera roll of like so many times that didn't go perfectly. So yeah, I mean 100%. I believe we have all gone through that, and it's actually I started doing recently. I was like, no, I'm spending 30 minutes, not more. I have another task after, so I find it really helpful as well. And yeah, talking to strangers, I like that. And in the one of the recent episodes, I talked with Hasib, who is ADHD coach in Pakistan, and he was talking about actively seeking discomfort. And I think this is the second part. You said once you start talking to people, you realize you're safe. Like, and also in case you would get the rejection or negative reaction, the stakes are so low. You have no idea who is that person. They don't know you. You are never going to see them again, or maybe you will see them again and then you will fall in love and marry them. But like, you will also, in addition to practicing public speaking, you will learn how to deal with negative reactions in a better way.
Yeah. And also to realize that most of the time, it's not about you, right? So if you have a negative reaction from somebody, that's probably because they're having a bad day or they're not present or it's not because you complimented their shoes. There's nothing wrong with you. You're, in some sense, you're irrelevant. And in some ways that's really comforting, to know that not everybody is thinking about you. The other thing I really encourage people to do, because when they don't believe me, is I will say, okay, go watch a TED Talk, for example, right? Go watch a 8-minute, 12-minute TEDx or TED Talk. And then just watch it all the way through. And then afterward, I want you to write down 5 things that they said, or 10 key points or something like that. What you will find if you do this exercise is that most of the time you can remember 1 or 2 things that they said. Or you'll remember a story that they told because you resonated with it in some way. This is great news, actually, even for those of us who do TED Talks, because what we realize is people are not focused on 100% of the content that we say. Their minds wander, they're thinking this hits or that hits or doesn't. So we don't have to have everything perfect all the time. We just want to make sure that as much as we can, we're grounded, we're present, we're speaking honestly and authentically. But like you said, you forgot some of your speech in that rehearsal. If that had happened in the actual event, it would have been fine. No one would have, kicked you out of the room, or you would have gone on. It would have been okay. So reminding yourself that there's quite a lot more space than people think for success in this area.
And having open mind, whatever happens, if we have the right growth mindset, we can actually turn it. When I think of that camera incident 7 years ago, this incident ended up in me doing a TEDx talk, which I even mentioned it because after that I felt so embarrassed. I felt like how I can't do it. And I approached my colleagues from the media team, please do something with me because I hate it. I want to start speaking. So because of this embarrassment, because my boss had to step in and do it instead of me, I was like, no way, I am learning how to speak. And here I go. I did my first TEDx talk, and I believe it's not the last one. So this is something really, even if our speech or the presentation doesn't go that well, if we are able to approach it this way, I believe it's helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to ask for feedback, but it can also be really helpful to get that information because it's very hard. As my business coach always says, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And so sometimes we think that we did really badly in a certain area, but actually that was fine. And this other thing was not great. So it's helpful to get feedback either from a coach or from the audience to figure out what's working and what's not.
Adriana, you told me to ask you this question, and I got really curious. What is this answer? So what's the one thing about the most successful speakers that almost nobody knows?
So I've actually already mentioned it, and that is that the most successful speakers that I work with or that I see, they focus more on the audience than on themselves. And they focus more on the audience and who they're speaking to, even than on their own content. And so the number one question, I think the most important question to ask yourself is, who is my audience? Who am I speaking to? That's really going to create the kind of secret sauce for getting your message across in the way that you want it to be perceived. And so starting sometimes, not always, but a lot of the time, starting with that question and then working backwards from there, or starting with, I have this spark, this idea, this motivation. Now, who am I offering it to? That's what really makes the difference.
And I believe it's also linked with the fact that we should not pay so much attention to ourselves, that it's not really about us and we are not that important as we think, as you mentioned earlier, because once we focus, why am I here? Why I want to share this message? That's really important. I mentioned it in my TEDx talk. I still have this strong East European accent and I still pronounce W as V, but I am still talking, right? Like, because this is more important that other people can start doing stuff they want to be doing and overcome the fears. So I am really, why should I make it about myself? It's not about me.
Yeah. And that said, we still need to do our work. We need to figure out how we can thrive in the environment that we're in. And so I generally, that's why I always start with the internal and then move to the external. So what do I need in order to feel good in this moment? And what does my audience need in order to get my message, right? We've got to do both.
And we need to practice.
Yes, we need to practice. We need to practice a lot.
Yeah, it's incredible how much preparation can go to 15 minutes talk.
Yes.
But I remember before the TEDx talk, I was reading the book on public speaking by, what's his name? The curator of the TED. So directly from him, I think it's Mr. Anderson, if I remember well. And he said that the way we prepare, it sounds robotic, and if we stop at that point, the speech won't be that great. So we need to pass that point when we kind of can say it out of the habit, so we can actually concentrate on our expressions and we don't have to concentrate, oh, what do I say next? And really, honestly, when we were practicing for the TEDx talk, in the beginning, everybody was a disaster. Everybody was forgetting. And then everybody did a great job. So it was amazing also to see everybody how it was in the beginning, and then over the weeks how it changed.
Yeah.
So the practice
I
is
mean,
really important.
you would be so surprised if you came into one of my rehearsals for a production, on day 2. It's a mess. It's terrible. Nobody knows what they're saying or where they're going or what they're doing or why. And so that's why we always say, first things first, memorize your script, then get the script out of your hand and let's move around and figure this out. But you need to rehearse. You can't just stand up and go for it without trying things and seeing what works and throwing things out.
As I was preparing for my TEDx talk, it was funny because my son, sometimes he's 4, so I used him to tell it to him. And by the time the TEDx happened, he actually knew the first paragraph of the speech as well.
Oh, that's so cute.
And before sleeping, he would be like, "Mommy, can you tell me your coaching conversation?" And it was like, and then I had to tell him the whole TEDx thing for him to sleep. So,
oh my gosh. Well, hey, that's perfect. If you can keep a 4-year-old entertained, you have a good speech.
well, then I think I did a good job then. I have to ask him if he still remembers actually when I will be going off the call. Adriana, it's super interesting topic, and I know we could talk on and on. This podcast, I want really people to get stuff done, and I want the men and women who are listening to go and take action. So if there is one thing you would want them to do after listening to this episode, what that would be?
Well, I want people to think about what it is that's going on specifically for them, not just generally, I'm afraid of public speaking, but what causes you the most pain or panic. Identify that. That's the number one thing. And then the number 2 thing is to find the resource that most closely addresses that issue. And that can be on the internet, that can be with me. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. But that's, I think, the most important thing is really get in deep and ask yourself that question.
Mm-hmm. And if the solution is you shared lots of wisdom and you have lots of experience. So where can we find you and what do you have to offer?
Yes, great. So my business is called Claim Center Stage, and my website is claimcenterstage.com. And the number one thing I would recommend people do is I offer free 30-minute discovery calls. And what we can do on that call is you can tell me the answer to that question. What is your pain point? What's your hardest thing? And then I can specifically point you to the right resources for that issue. And I have a library of resources of my own. I've also got some free tools right there on my website that you can download. There's one for how to start your speeches. And there's one that is that grounding meditation I mentioned. So you can get both if you want. Sign up for my newsletter and I send out, tools every week as well. But the most useful thing, I think, is that free 30-minute call, because that way I can really ask you a couple of important questions and get you pointed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. I will include all the links in the show notes so everybody can find them. And I agree, the discovery calls are always amazing because you can see the real person. So whoever is listening, and if you are wondering, should I talk to Adriana or not, please go for it. You have nothing to lose, and you will practice public speaking on the call with somebody you don't know so well.
That's right.
So Adriana, it was really my pleasure. Now I am getting more excited. When is my next speaking opportunity? Because now it's been like 6 months since my TEDx talk. So this got me excited, and I hope that it inspired the guys who were listening. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure.